Nirmal Verma, welcome to this ICA Guardian Conversation. You've been writing for more than 30 years. You grew up in India at a time when, as now, a lot of middle class and upper middle class people had most of their education in English. You went to a very posh Delhi college, St. Stephen's College, and yet when you came to write, to start writing fiction, you chose Hindi. Why did you make that choice?
Well, I don't think I made any deliberate decision to write in Hindi. It was something which was given to me. It was so natural to write in my own language, in which I talked to my parents, to my sisters. And also my earliest upbringing was such that all the most important influences, the religion in which I was brought up, the most important festivals in which I took part, were deeply rooted in an ethos of a language which affected my entire emotional world. So I didn't find any contradiction between these two modes of apprehending the world. One through English, where I got my education, through which I got my education, and the other one in which I felt so necessarily compulsive within myself to express all that I feel deeply and emotionally in my own language. There was no such problem for me to make a choice.
And what was the early inspiration for your first short stories?
I would say that I felt that is the only way by which I could bring about a certain clarity, a certain lucidity in a world of deep chaos in which I thought I am living. Writing to me was a very fumbling avenue, fumbling way to find a certain meaning to my very chaotic, very inchoate, very I would say very apparently anarchic experiences to which I was exposed since childhood. Secondly, I thought that this is one activity in which I won't have to come into contact with the public. I mean, it is something which I can do in my room, just with a pencil and a piece of paper. I don't have to come into contact with the people as a musician does, or a painter. Even he has to deal with the galleries. It was something, a very private activity, which in no way contradicted with my very innate aptitude of living in my own world, and through my writing making an attempt to project into a reality which was very much external to me. Writing therefore for me was a sort of a bridge between my private world and the external reality.
Could you expand on that a bit more? What kind of bridge were you trying to make with this external reality?
Well, what exactly is the reality was a question. To me, I was exposed to it on a political level. I was a member of the Communist Party for a number of years, and on another level, I felt that this very commitment to a political ideology in some way thwarted and frustrated the ideals which I cherished most deeply. And yet my commitment to an ideology was not superficial, because that also nurtured certain ideals in terms of human good, human welfare, liberation of suffering humanity. But then what about the suffering of a particular individual soul? And when it comes into contradiction, when it becomes something which is not in consistency with an ideology, which completely ignores these particular specific sufferings of individuals, then what should one do? These were the problems which I could only sort out, not in talks or discussions, though I used to have them, long discussions with my friends, with the party leaders, but I thought that the best and perhaps the most effective way to find out not final solutions but certain ways of tackling these contradictory realities within my fictional world, which gave me much greater freedom than my friends, my party, my family, or a particular social setup in which I was living.
So although you were in the Communist Party until 1956, and that was really as a very young man, when you came to write, you didn't overtly choose political subjects, although you were trying to sort out this turmoil in your mind.
No, I didn't. And yet it was a very important, a very crucial part of my obsessions, my concerns. For example, it may seem very paradoxical to you that my contact with Europe at one time was really through the writers who were very much politically committed. Louis Aragon from France, Pablo Neruda, Paul Eluard, Jorge Amado from Brazil. These were the writers whose books in some way built up an image of the Western world, of the Latin American world for me. But they gave me only one image of reality, that is a political image, though their poetry was absolutely great. But I was not very much happy with that particular image of reality which they brought to me through their poetry, through their novels. And then that was the only way through which I could make contact with the external world. On the other hand, my commitment to a certain type of a religion, well, I belong to a particular Hindu ethos, a Hindu metaphysic, which gave me from my very childhood that truth can only be gained through a multiple approach to reality, and not to be committed to one particular truth and not to be servile to it. Now this essential ancestral faith that truth cannot be monopolized by one ideology, that there are multiple facets of reality, and these facets are not contradictory to one another but could be unified in one non-dualistic whole, gave me a certain faith in a particular religious approach to reality, which was very, very different from all the political and ideological theses or books that I was reading at that time in the college.
How would you, can you describe how in your fiction you've dealt with these multiple faces of reality or different approaches to truth?
Well, it is very easy actually. You love in a story, there is a situation where a person feels, and very deeply and authentically, that he is not able to reach out to the other person. That is one feeling of helplessness. But in the story, in the texture of the story itself, he reaches a certain point of relationship where he feels that it is not impossible for him to surrender some part of his egoistic attachments in order to get or long for love. Now these are the two things. His very great desire to be attached to his own self, to his own world, coming into clash with another reality, that is that unless you surmount and transcend the limitations of this self and have the courage to reach out to the other, you won't be able to get love. You won't be able to get any meaning of your own personal self unless you are able to establish a meaningful contact with the other. Now these are the two realities, two truths. But my truth being in some way refined, sublimated by my deep desire to reach out to the other person. Now this
in The Dead and the Dying, for instance, where
exactly
you have that, there's the father and the son. The father's nursing the son in hospital.
That's very true.
And
yes.
Trying to recalling his past, recalling it with both nostalgia and resentment.
Exactly.
And the father's rage coming out against the family. But at the end of that story, they never do finally they reach out to each other, but they don't
Yeah.
finally meet
Yeah.
because the father dies in his
Yeah.
with his rage unmitigated.
Yes, it is that field, it is the charged field, which is the raw material of the story of fiction. It is not finding a way out. Within that charged field of emotion and conflict, if a reader is able to see the nature of the important need to communicate and also the inability to communicate the ultimate truth of oneself. These desires, these longings, these incapacities, it is precisely these feelings which constitute the facets of, I think, meaningful fiction, not that there is any final solution or the ultimate way out of these problems. But if they illuminate the nature of this reality, then perhaps I think a writer, to a large extent, is able to communicate what he considers to be uncommunicable.
In a lot of your fiction, people reading your work, for instance, have called you a poet of loneliness.